Hey folks, Dave Temple here. As you know, my podcast is all about talking to the best thriller writers in the world. Now, while I don't put myself in that category of the best, I've certainly got my hat now in the ring. And after nearly 3 years of hosting this podcast, I think it's time to toot my own horn, if you will. So with that, I'm offering my thriller, The Poser, for sale all this month. It stars Detective Pat Norelli, a rookie cop working the overnight beat in Hollywood when one of the town's biggest stars is found dead in her Hollywood Hills home only hours after winning an Oscar. Beloved by her fans, Pat thinks someone wants this star dead and sees this as a way to forge her own path and get the promotion she craves. I'm proud of the response I've gotten from fans, and I'm confident you're going to like The Poser. So for the rest of this month, you can get the ebook for only $5 or the paperback for $14. Since I do this weekly podcast as a free service, perhaps you'd consider this as a way to help out a fellow thriller writer. There are two ways to reach the link. First, you can go to davidtemplebooks.com, scroll down to see The Poser, click, and you're on your way. Or head over to Amazon. You can find it there. Again, davidtemplebooks.com or Amazon. Thanks in advance for your support. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Thriller Zone. Hello and welcome to the Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and I am so glad you have spun across that dial and joined us. We're in season 5 already. That's year 3. We must be doing something right. On today's show, I am very happy to announce that I have a first-time debut author. Now, I don't do these often. As the show has really grown and taken off, I do them less frequently. However, this book came across my desk. I gave it a peek and I went, oh my goodness, yes. His name is Bruce Borgos, like gorgeous. And the book is called The Bitter Past. As you can see by the yellow sticky notes and notes throughout, I really enjoyed this book. Before we get there, I want to say a very quick thank you to the nice comments that have been coming into our email box, thethrillerzone@gmail. A lot of folks just taking the time, dropping a quick note saying, we love the show, love the authors you have on there, love just what you're doing. Thank you. I'm humbled. And I'm very grateful to be providing this service. I have so much fun. We have a good time. So, without any further ado, let's get on into the green room where Bruce is waiting, chillaxing on the Thriller Zone. How much do you like the show?
I love it. Yes, I actually do. I really enjoyed your interview with Megan Abbott.
Oh, she's so good.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, dude, I have the best job in the world. I really
know
do.
You. Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bruce Borgos to the Thriller Zone.
Oh, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Borgos like gorgeous. And it suits you so well, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm going to tell you straight up front, I'm going to sound a little bit like a fanboy.
Uh-oh.
The Bitter Past by Bruce Borgos. Dude, how can I put it simply? I'm going to give you a full review in a couple of minutes, but I love this book.
Good.
Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest. We're new friends, so I'm going to I don't really bullshit people. I tell it like it is, but if I don't like a book, if I just flat out don't like it, you're probably not going to know it.
Right.
But if I love it, you're going to know it and you're going to walk away going, geez, he really loves my book. And this is one of those books I really love.
Great.
You see these little doohickeys here?
Uh-huh. You got some notes in there.
I got some notes because No, folks, I'm going to come back to that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sometimes I get so excited, I kind of get ahead of myself. So let's not do that. Now, I will tell you this, though. Before we get started, I have to say, I knew I was going to like you when I read in your bio in the back. It makes me laugh every time I read it. Bruce Borgos works very hard every day to prove his high school guidance counselor had good instincts when he said, you'll never be an astronaut. For some reason that got me. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to like this guy. Just a good feeling.
That's a true story, by the way.
Well, I hope it is because you don't look like a liar.
Yeah.
I did not know that this is a debut for you.
It's my debut mystery. I have written 2 other novels that I self-published 5-7 years ago. But this is really my first foray into the mystery thriller space.
Let's take a second, if you don't mind. We can name the titles if you want to or not. It doesn't matter to me. My point is, sometimes there's a lot of listeners in my show that are self-published guys. I'm a self-published guy.
Sure.
I've got 9 books under my my little banner, and I had this theory early on, and I want to know how it resonates with you. I thought I work on this theory of like, all right, it's going to take 10 years or 10,000 hours, whatever that magic thing is, for you to really feel confident that you're doing that you're hitting the marks, right?
Right.
So I'm like, 9 books, I should know by then. So now I'm ready. So tell me this. Did those first 2 books of yours that you self-published, were you kind of testing the waters? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like for me. My first book, which is a novel called Holding Fire, which I self-published in 2016, was really kind of a proof of concept for me. I had the idea, David, for many years because I was such an avid reader that I just knew instinctively. I just thought I could do this. I could write a book.
Yeah.
And of course, working full time and doing what normal people do in their lives made it difficult to focus on getting that first book done. But that's really what it was for me. It was testing the waters. It was trying to see, can I put into a story that I've created? Can I create a world that makes sense, that has a good story to tell? Can I do that? And that's what it was for me. The second book came a lot faster, a lot easier, but still very much kind of I want to see what I can do here.
And what genre were both of those?
Well, I would classify both of them really as contemporary fiction. The first one was specifically about the West, involved a real life scenario of a kind of a war between cattle ranchers, and the federal government over grazing land. Ultimately, it's more of a love story in the end, but it's about family and it's about all these things. I just use kind of a real scenario as the backdrop for the story.
Okay, not autobiographical at all,
No.
right?
No.
All right. Well, I am glad that you did a shift and went with thriller. Because, dude, you have it.
Oh, thanks.
No, seriously. How did you get, I want to say Minotaur.
Minotaur?
Minotaur.
Yeah.
Jeez, thank you. Hi. It's early in the morning.
Yeah.
Minotaur, how did you land this gig? I mean, really, book 1, how did you land it? How did you land the agent? How did you land the publishing?
I'm so glad you asked me, because a lot of people don't have a great sense of how people become writers and eventually get published, especially in the traditional publishing space. And for me, after I had done those first 2 novels, I said, okay, I think I'm ready to try to get traditionally published. And I really wanted that experience, primarily because I was still working full time and I'm not a marketing person. Right. I wanted a team of people behind me. Now, and most of your listeners know that to get traditionally published, you firstly have to have a literary agent.
Yeah.
That's really the only way to do it.
The only way.
So after I wrote the novel, I studied, or while I was writing it, I was also studying how to get an agent. And I took a couple of online courses. I found who I thought were some people who were experts in the area. I practiced it. I did everything I could to create the best, what they call query letter to agents, targeted specific groups of agents. And I was very, very fortunate, quite honestly, David. I landed my agent after about the 5th or 6th letter that I sent out.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and she's a very well-known agent in New York. And I kind of hit just a gold mine. Like I said, I was very fortunate. The private editor that I had employed to read over and give me feedback on my manuscript, she was fine with me mentioning that my manuscript had been edited by her. And she's a lady by the name of Kristen Weber, and she's extremely good at editing mysteries. And she said, by all means, mention my name in your query letters to agents. And as soon as I did that, my current agent contacted me and said, I want to read your manuscript.
Wow.
And literally, within just a couple of months after signing with her, she sold the book right away. After we worked on a few things, back and forth. I think I signed with her in December a couple years ago. By February, she started taking it out, and she had sold it in May.
Holy bananas. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, like I said, a lot of things fell into place. But as you well know, it's you do the things, hopefully, that you need to do to put you in the right place to make those things happen.
Okay, well, folks, if you're paying attention and taking notes like I am, here's a couple things. Bruce said, I did the research. So he did the work. Then he practiced. You got to practice.
Yes.
You got to hone your skills before you get going. And then he mastered the query letter. Now, it does help the fact that you picked a top shelf editor, bueno. Yeah. Yeah. And that you mentioned that you had the wherewithal to follow that instruction and put it in your query. And I got to imagine with your sense of humor, which we're going to get to in a second, your query letter probably, I would love to read. You promise me you'll send me your query letter. Will you do that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I won't read it on the show, on the air if you don't want me to, but I do want to read it because I am fascinated by that particular step in success. Yeah. Because it really does. I've talked to a lot of agents over the past 2 years for this show, and they'll tell you, and they'll say this, and this makes so much sense to me, Bruce. They go, if you knew, David, how many query letters I go through in a week,
right?
And how big the stack of manuscripts, well, the old days is a stack. I'm pointing as though people are looking at home, but it's electronic now. The point is, if you knew the volume that I go through on any given day, you'd realize that if you don't grab me in a sentence or three, you don't stand a chance.
No, you don't. That's absolutely right.
So I gotta read it. I gotta have the inside scoop.
Yeah, okay, I'll send it to you.
Kristen Weber, by the way, big props to you. Big love from the Thriller Zone to you. Well, Mr. Borgos, I want to say that, like back to my comment about in the inside blurb, I knew that the humor. All right, if the humor's there, I bet you the humor's going to shine in the book. Let's just see. So it does, and in the bitter past, it shines through most eloquently. And I just could not believe it was a debut, but I was blown away. And you want to know why? Ask me why.
Why were you blown away?
Because I'm so glad you asked, Bruce. What a great question. It's got everything. It's got great characters you root for. This is not my review yet. I'm just talking about stuff that I like. Great characters you cheer for. The desert. Love the desert. Murder. Russian assassins. Hello. You can stop there. FBI. You even have a nice little dash of romance, which ends up being one of my favorite parts. I'm not a romance reader. This is not a romance book, but the way you weave romance in is so freaking good. And all packaged around a sheriff by the name of Porter Beck. Whew. Whew.
That is it in a nutshell.
Insert comment. All right, but okay. Can I do this? Because I love doing this.
Yep.
This is chapter 2. I'm only on chapter 2, and chapter 2 is only 9 pages in, and it starts like this. And I'm gonna truncate it just a little bit to expedite. Porter Beck sitting at his desk. I'm deep in thought, staring down at the pictures of the tortured body of Ralph Atterbury, and don't see her walk into my office. I'm sorry, are you not Sheriff Beck? She says. The question finally reaches the hamster in my brain, currently on a smoke break, apparently in charge of processing incoming messages, causing my head to lift slowly from the desk. Why do you say it that way? I'm still examining her, making mental notes, certain she knows I'm contemplating where our wedding should take place. Oh my God. There are so many times I was laughing out loud with this book. I've got 2 more. I'm not going to give away all my candy in the lobby, but I want to know this. You weave this tapestry of this tale so terrifically engaging. I mean, yes, and I hope this is a compliment to you, because I feel the influence of Craig Johnson's Longmire, which, God, I love that series. I didn't read the books, but I love the TV series.
Oh,
the first
yeah.
CJ Boxes, Joe Pickett.
Yep.
But you're still remaining wholly original with Porter Beck. Talk to me about Porter Beck. Where did he come from? How did you make him? You know, all the good questions that authorial guys like you like to tell.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you like him as a character. He came from a little bit after the point where I had kind of framed out the story. First of all, I'm a history buff at heart. And growing up here in the Nevada desert and having lived here since the mid 60s, I was always very interested in that part of our history here, not only Nevada's history, but the country's history. When we were testing the atomic bombs above ground in the 1950s, and all of the radiation that flowed typically eastward into Utah and many other states, causing its own problems. But I thought that was a fascinating time of our history, the Cold War, the Russians, the Soviets, everything that was going on. I didn't want to write a nonfiction story about that. There's plenty of books about the atomic testing era. But I loved that piece of our history. And so I thought, well, how do I weave that into a story that people are going to want to read now? So I thought that it dovetailed nicely into a dual timeline story that takes place predominantly in the present day, but works its way back and forth into the 1950s. And to do that, I needed something to start the story. And so I decided I needed something really kind of captivating, a murder that would kick everything off. And so I needed a sheriff. And I chose a real county, Lincoln County, which is just north of Las Vegas and directly east of the Nevada test site, what is now called the Nevada National Security Site, where all of this stuff took place. And once I did that, and I knew I needed, because it's not like a big city police department up there, it's a sheriff's department, which is, as I describe in the book, manned by, a Boy Scout troop, essentially, in size. Yeah. And yet they're covering this huge area about the size of Maryland. So that's how I came upon selecting a sheriff for my story. And then I just thought about, I need to give him an interesting background. I need to give him some personal obstacles that he needs to overcome, that he's dealing with on a daily basis. And that's kind of how I came to him without giving too much away.
Well, and speaking of the personal obstacles, you infiltrated the story with a personal obstacle. I like that phrase, that I never had given any thought to. Now, I will say that as a bit of a hint, it does happen to certain people, especially with time as you grow older. However, I'd never thought about the negative ramifications that would happen to someone in his position with the aforementioned malady.
Right.
Is that as obtuse as I possibly can be? But it's such a unique little... It's one of those little silver threads that you weave into something and you don't think about it at the moment. But when you see that silver thread later, you go, oh, that's interesting. And then later you go, oh, now I see where that silver thread is there.
Right.
So I dig that. The sense of humor, let me back up a second. That opening scene is probably one of the most graphic opening scenes I've read in a while. And I read a lot of books, Bruce, as you've heard me say on the show. I mean, I don't know. We're approaching a buck and a half here into the 5th season now, year number 3. And I have read a lot of stuff. I have not read a scene like that opening scene. I mean, I had to literally just pause a couple of times going, ooh, not only did my stomach do a little roller coaster lift, but I thought, I got to talk to Bruce. And my first question is, Bruce, have you been privy to any of this? That's what I want to know. And which led me to think, well, if he has, what in the hell has he done for a living that would give you access to that? So it's a double whammy. Hit me now.
Yeah, actually, the answer is no. It's no to both questions. I haven't seen anything like that. But like you, I've read so much in this genre that I could envision. I need something powerful to start the story, and there were a couple people that really helped me hone that first chapter to what it is now, and that's my editor, and also a friend of mine who is a former crime scene analyst.
Oh,
and I talked extensively to the sheriff who just retired recently from Lincoln County, and I'd interviewed him several times, and he gave me some insights into how they would actually arrive at and process a crime scene like that in that rural setting versus like a bigger city, with the limited resources that they have. So again, I wanted to make it exactly as you described it, really this horrific, gruesome crime scene. And I knew that there was a risk there because, we've all done this. You pick up a book, sometimes in the bookstore, and you read the first couple pages and you go, oh, that's not for me. And I knew that there was a risk of people doing that with my story and immediately being turned off by how vivid I made that murder scene. But there's a reason I made it that way.
Well, the opening line is, we don't have a lot of murder in Lincoln County. And that makes you go, oh, well, what? And then you start. So within just a paragraph, you start peeling it away, if you will. And I'm like, now, luckily, I secretly dig shit like this because I'm a twisted little, but I could see how some people would say, like, I'm thinking of my mother-in-law. She'd like, I'm not reading that. That is just too gruesome for me.
Yep.
Plus, I need more sex in it, but that's a whole other story. So anyway, so there's that. All right. Well, can you do this for me? Tell me what your background is. What did you do before you became an internationally known writer?
I spent a lot of time in management positions in the very glamorous world of employee benefit administration.
Oh my God!
Where I obviously ran into a lot of situations like this that I described in my book. No, I had a very kind of mundane existence in my career, which was work that I definitely enjoyed and I thought I was good at, and which is probably the reason I did it as long as I did before I decided to just take up writing full time. But I just was always immersed in both novels and television and movies that involved, whether it was a police procedural kind of story or a spy thriller, those kinds of things, and they just stick in your brain, as you know. I mean, you find certain stories that you just love and you see over and over, or you read over and over. And it's that kind of detail and that kind of description that really kind of grabs you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. I got to read another one of these because this one just really, I love this one. Where is he? Okay. So we're back to Sana, who is this very attractive FBI agent who is on the case. And she looks up and says, do you have a theory? My eyes are the perfect shade of non-committal, and Locke doesn't wait for me to respond, as if she had just asked a silverbacked gorilla what he thinks about the price of eggs. Folks, if you're not enjoying it as much as me, go do something else. But I'll tell you, sometimes you just got to hang with it. Okay, there's one more. Sana's dark eyes stay locked on me. What's the story with Arshel and this Eamon guy? And before you answer, does everyone up here have weird names? I'm sorry, weird names, he asks. Arshel, Wardell, Tuffy, Eamon, Porter. It's like the Bible meets Zane Grey. That in of itself is funny enough, but then he goes, wow, I think. She knows who Zane Grey was. We should definitely start planning our wedding.
Yeah.
It's the inner dialogue that he has. And I think probably the reason I enjoy this so much, Bruce, is that you, with all of this murder and mayhem, you have this thread of humor throughout. And I have talked to enough cops, police officers in the business to know that they have a remarkable sense of humor, and B, will tell you, well, we have to because of all the stuff that we see on any given day. If you don't have some levity, it will eat you up from the inside out.
Right. And to that end, to that point, so my main character, Porter Beck, has an interesting past himself. He grew up in the Nevada desert in Lincoln County. His father was the sheriff for, several decades. But he himself went into the Army just after college, became what they call a foreign area officer, which is a specialist in a particular region or country. So it's attached to, an intelligence type of outfit. But he has a very interesting past in that respect, which comes into play later in the book. And our skills, those are some skills that he obviously utilizes in his current job as sheriff. But again, he's also dealing with some kind of disability that he doesn't want to talk about much, not a lot of people know about, and he's trying to figure a way to still do his job with.
Yeah, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in a upcoming sequel, which I'm very confident that you will have, I'm sure it will show itself more. What I'm hoping is that he'll find relief so that it doesn't take him out of this job, because I see Porter Beck feels like a guy that's going to be around a long time.
Yeah, that's certainly my hope, and that's my intention. And that's certainly my publisher's intention.
Yeah.
So that's what we're all hoping for.
Okay. Well, now here's the official. I make notes in the back of the book, things that really mean something to me. And I wrote to myself, and I realized I'm massacring a word here, so just bear with me. I even put it in quotes in case you're wondering. One of the funnest reads I've read this year starts with a gross, overly zealous murder, but becomes complex with each turning page thanks to a liberal dusting of genuine humor. Insert accolades of retort here.
That's certainly what I was striving for, quite honestly. I mean, I wanted to write a serious story, but I'm not a serious guy. So the humor was very important to me, and thankfully a number of folks like you, the early reviewers for the most part, really love that part of the book, which is it's that inner dialogue that you spoke of, and how he kind of views everything.
And I'm telling you something, for listeners who want to know the definition of finding your voice, read The Bitter Past, and you'll instantly understand when you sit in class trying to learn, what does the professor mean by finding your voice? Here you go, Billy. Pay attention, because this is the personification, a quintessential example of a particular voice that would not be easily duplicated. By the way, I made another note here. It says, one other thing I like about this is not a perfect bow ending. Now, a lot of times you'll get a writer who's written a great book, and all of a sudden you're like, dun, 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 and then, the ending is there and it's gone, and it's done like in 2 pages, and you're kind of like, wow, that kind of ended fast. This doesn't do that. Yeah. This ends, and then it kind of downshifts a little bit into third and fourth and then third, and gives you time to see the new world. And then it kind of tees you up very delicately for what is potentially to come in the future. Kind of cool.
Yeah, and I really, thinking that ultimately we wanted to make a series here. I wanted to leave the ending out there like that, which satisfied this initial story certainly, but gave us some window into what that world was going to be like for Porter Beck and his family going forward. And ultimately, the book really is about, as you no doubt saw, it really comes down to the question of when the stakes really matter, can we do the right thing? Are we capable of doing the right thing at the right time? And that's a question that not only Porter Beck struggles with, but most of the other major characters in the story.
And humankind in general.
Right. Yeah.
We should all be asking ourselves that,
Right.
shouldn't we?
Yes. And it's not, very often, most often, it is not an easy answer.
Well, I got to tell you, the reality of this protagonist, what's interesting, you didn't spend a great deal of time painting the picture of what he looked like, which I thought was interesting. I kept going, oh, he's probably going to give me an idea. You hint at things, but you don't. He stood 6'4", 227, whatever. So it allowed me to create my own version of what he was, which, yeah.
Yep. And I did that, again, very purposely. Like you, I'm a huge Craig Johnson lover, but I knew even before the TV show came out exactly what Walt Langmeyer looked like. Yeah. This real giant of a man, almost like Jack Reacher, that kind of description in a book where you know exactly what this guy looks like.
Yeah.
And not like the Tom Cruise version of Jack Reacher, but the new guy. And I love that show. But so I did want to leave the reader the ability to pretty much decide on their own who Porter Beck was, and certainly physically.
Back to Longmire. The thing I always liked about Longmire, he was a loner-ish. His house is in the middle of construction or destruction. He was kind of sloppy, but he always went by his instincts. And that's kind of what I felt with Porter. And the other thing I like about Porter is, and you don't make a big deal about it. A lot of times people will make a big deal about this particular, I'm going to massacre this word. Is it mnemonic? It's this ability. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. To have this amazing memory and recall of a minutia of detail. And he has that, but you don't beat it over the head. So it's not like he's a secret agent, man. But anyway, I'm going to finish by saying that The Bitter Past, folks, is probably one of the most enjoyable books I've read this year. It opens with a horrific scene that you can't get out of your head, sadly to say, or maybe good to say, because it shows you what kind of craftsmanship Bruce has got going. But the good news is it travels through this multitude of characters who are all well crafted. They're believable. Still manages to deliver a secret punch that I'm not quite sure I saw coming. There were hints that I'm like, oh, I think I know it's coming, and you do think, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, he got me. And a magnificent feat for book one.
Well, I appreciate that. I love the feedback, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad that there were some surprises for you, and I hope that is indicative of what everyone else will experience when the book comes out here shortly.
Yeah, and which, go ahead and tell me that you are working on the sequel, right? Yes?
Yeah, I've actually written book 2. It's done and is with my publisher now, and we expect it to be out sometime in 2024. I'm not sure of the timeline yet. And I'm currently working on what I hope will be book 3.
Ain't no hoping necessary, Bruce. I think it's a given. And I tell you what, I don't say this often. There have been a few books that have come across my desk in the last 2.5 years. And some of them, being a closet indie filmmaker, I want to option them because I think about how would it make a great series or a movie. I won't rattle those off, but this would be in that list. And it's a short list, but this would be in that list.
It's interesting that you say that. The gentleman who recorded the audio version is a guy by the name of James Babson, and he's an actor in Hollywood, and he does a lot of audiobooks. So he does a lot of great voice work, and he sent me a nice note as he was wrapping up the recording of The Bitter Past. And we had talked online a little bit. He'd asked me a few questions prior to getting started on recording it, just for clarification. And when he got done, though, he sent me this nice note along with a sample of the recording. And he said, listen, he goes, I'm an actor, and this is just me. But if I were you, I would turn this into a screenplay.
And what did you do with that?
Well, I'm not a screenwriter. I've tried my hand at it. I much prefer to write novels, but I have, again, thankfully, through the fabulous team at Minotaur and my agent, the ability to get somebody out there who's, looking to hopefully at some point turn this into something on the screen. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, we're going to continue that conversation, and don't let me forget it, because we're going to chat about that after we get off the air. But folks, if you are interested in learning more about The Bitter Past, which drops bam, like in just hours practically by the time this show drops, go to bruceborgos.com. That is Borgos. Of course, I'll have it on the screen down there. But you can also follow him on Twitter, as I do. And I'm telling you, Bruce, you got a hit here. You're a delightful interview. I love the book. Congratulations to you.
Oh, thanks so much, David. I know you're going to be at BoucherCon, so hope to see you there. Maybe we can sit down and have an adult beverage and catch up.
Yes. By the way, for those folks who are still sitting on the fence about BoucherCon, it is here in lovely San Diego. And for those who don't know, now if you come in May or June, you're going to face May gray or June gloom. It's a weird anomaly of weather. August, however, gorgeous. So sign up for BoucherCon. Number 2, you and I are going to have a beverage, which, by the way, it's the craft beer capital of the world.
Even better.
If you like.
Yeah.
Folks, once again, the book is The Bitter Past. Bruce Borgos, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
Thanks once again to Bruce. What a great book, The Bitter Past, Bruce Borgos. Drops tomorrow. Such a good book. All right, folks, the summer is just getting started and we are cooking like the 4th of July, which has already passed. Coming up on our next show, a couple of quick things. This author, the one I'm getting ready to mention, he is writing for one of my absolute favorite franchises of all time. And it's not James Bond. This guy is a hell of a writer, and his new book is called The Bourne Defiance. Brian Freeman, recognize the name? It's a Jason Bourne novel based on the Robert Ludlum series. The Bourne Defiance is coming up next week, and I got to tell you something. As always, Brian delivers, so please make a point to join us. Until then, I want to say thank you for the nice comments. Always, always, always grateful for those. You can stop by our website, thethrillerzone.com. You can join us on YouTube at youtube.com/thethrillerzone. And of course, we're on all podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and any others that you listen to. I'm David Temple, your host. I'll see you next time for another edition of The Thriller Zone.
Your front row seat to the best thrillers. The Thriller Zone.
Where's Momo and Popo?